So a little disclaimer before I show this video, this is from the vanilla version of the game, not the definitive edition, only because I'm not far enough in the game in order to capture there yet. I'm getting close. If you saw Marco and I stream recently, we are in Act 2 now, so moving forward I should be able to do other videos with the definitive edition, but please bear with me. For the most part, things haven't changed too much. There is one change that I will mention when I get to the level 14 version though. Okay, so for this video, I'm going to be doing the Assassin. This is the level 9 version. Just like my other videos, this is not Lone Wolf, unlike the guide video that I did. I'm actually using Glass Cannon here, which can be extremely difficult to use, but I'm going to show you in this video how to do it effectively. Before I get started though, just a note about the Assassin. This was very much intended to be a solo build or maybe a duo build with another Assassin. However, you can use it in a group, and you're going to see here in the level 9 demonstration how it'll perform pretty much how it would in a group. Okay, so the first thing I do here in turn 1 is use Marksman's Fang because they're all lined up there, and I actually hit all 3, which is pretty incredible because that almost never happens. And the next thing I do is use Ricochet. Now, it's important when you use Ricochet that you always aim for the furthest or closest target because it doesn't go two directions. So if you shoot the middle target, it's not going to go back and then forward. So I shot the front one, so it just kept bouncing along in kind of a straight line. I also used Flesh Sacrifice to give me a little extra damage and an extra AP. I couldn't use it at the very beginning of my turn because I was already full on AP, so I would have wasted the AP, so I had to take at least one shot first. Then I go ahead and use Ballistic Shot for some good damage. And then you can see I do something kind of interesting here. I actually use Bull Rush. Yes, it works with a bow, and it works great here as they're all lined up, and I set bleeding on one of the targets. And then I go invisible to end my turn so I cannot be attacked. On my next turn here, I go ahead and swap to my daggers using AP for that, as invisibility lasts 2 turns. I can just basically do whatever I want. You can see I was trying to get behind the archer there, but there's really no way to get behind him, so I just decided to end my turn standing right where I was. On this turn, I go ahead and bull rush through again because I can hit all 3, which is great. You can see I was contemplating using Whirlwind, but I don't like to use it unless I can hit at least 3 people, so I don't here. Then I go ahead and use Backlash to get back in range of the archer there. And then I go ahead and use Sawtooth Knife in order to try and kill it. As you can see, the tooltip says 93 or something like that, and I didn't quite end up killing him. So, unfortunately, he's going to die on his turn, which will give me 2 extra AP on my turn. But because I'm using Glass Cannon, that's pretty much wasted. So you definitely want to make sure that you get the kill on your turn when using this build, or you're going to waste some AP like I did there. And the last thing I do, of course, is use Uncanny Evasion to make sure I can't get hit on my turn because I cannot go back invisible just yet. On this turn, I go ahead and use Whirlwind as I'm able to hit 3 enemies and I get that totem killed, so I get the Executioner bonus. Then I bull rush through again, hitting all 3 targets. And one great thing about Bull Rush is you can rush through enemies, putting you behind them, kind of like Backstab. So you can get Backstabs easily by using it, and you can use it every turn. It's so good for getting you in position for Backstabs. After I Backstab, I go ahead and use Skin Graft to give me back Chameleon Cloak and Uncanny Evasion. And then I go ahead and use Adrenaline again, and I Bull Rush through again. Then I use Chameleon Cloak. At this point, you're probably wondering, how is this an assassin? You are literally playing like a warrior. I assure you, as you watch more gameplay, I will show you exactly just that. On this turn, I go ahead and use Whirlwind in order to hit all 3 enemies. Then I go ahead and Bull Rush through again in order to hit them all again, which is great. I end up behind the dog again, and I'm able to finish it off with Sawtooth Knife, which took me a minute to figure out what I wanted to do there. And then I go ahead and use Backlash to finish off the other dog, and then I use Uncanny Evasion to make sure I can't be knocked down or crippled on the enemy's turn. Well, even with a 90% dodge chance, I somehow still get hit by the crippled attack. And then, luckily, I am able to use first aid to remove it. I bull rush through, killing the totem, and get behind the warrior there, or the summoner, rather. But unfortunately, I don't position myself perfectly, so I have to use an AP taking a step over. And then all I can really do is backstab him a couple times, trying to take off as much armor as I can. This turn, you can see I learned from the mistake of the last one when I bull rush through. I make sure I'm exactly behind the summoner there, and I get the totem, so I get the backstab lined up. I go ahead and use Flesh Sacrifice and Adrenaline and Flurry, and I get him just down to almost dead, and then he bleeds out on his turn. So that's the level 9 Assassin. You can see it's extremely effective. I'm soloing here, non-lone wolf. This is on classic difficulty. But something you didn't see here is how horribly this fight can go wrong if you don't know the target priority. So the archer there can shoot a static cloud that will stun you, and you're screwed. Then you'll die. So you can see that I focused him down first in this fight in order to make sure that he couldn't kill me. Also, the summoner can throw a frost grenade that chills you, which reduces your dodge chance by 30%, which isn't horribly that bad, but when you are relying on uncanny evasion to stay alive, that can get you killed. So you have to know the target priority, and you have to play very smartly when playing this build, and probably a few times on some scenarios that are more difficult, you will have to replay the scenario to figure out what the target priority is because of the skills they use when you die the first time. Okay, this is the level 14 version of the build. I've decided to do two different versions of this fight, one melee assassin only and one ranged assassin only, so you can kind of see how you would play this if you wanted to do only a scoundrel build, or maybe you wanted to do only like a sniper, assassin, ranger build. So I decided to show both, so this first clip is of the melee version. So for those of you who have seen the other gameplay videos that I've done, you'll notice immediately that I'm starting from a different side, and that's because I know the priority for this fight, and the Fear Maidens need to be killed first. This is because of the fears that they do, because of the silences that they cast, and if I don't kill them first, there is just no way to win this fight, really. Okay, so I start off here sneaking and get that backstab right off the bat, and also plus 40% damage from Gorilla. Then I bull rush through in order to get behind her, but unfortunately I missed the attack, would have said bleeding also. Then I hit her twice with regular backstabs, and then I finish her off with Backlash and use Chameleon Cloak. And then I turn invisible and start heading towards my next target, which is all the way across the map. Now, because invisibility lasts 2 turns, I'm free to go ahead and just run over instead of using something like Cloak and Dagger. Might as well save the cooldown if I need it. So I just go ahead and burn my AP, getting in position so that on my next turn I'll have my full 6 AP and I'm ready to backstab. So on this turn I attack her twice with the backstab there, realize she's not going to die, so I pop Adrenaline to give me some extra AP, and I finish her off. Then I go ahead and use Skin Graft in order to refresh my cooldowns and get Chameleon Cloak back. And I go ahead and go back invisible.
Hurts, doesn't it?
So my priority targets are now down, and I go ahead and make my way over to my next target using all the time I need because I still have 1 turn of invisibility after this. Okay, so you can see I do something really interesting here. With my last turn of invisibility, I actually burn 4 AP and go into sneak mode. Now, I went into sneak mode in order to get the extra damage from Gorilla on my attack here. Now, something really interesting about the Definitive Edition that was not mentioned anywhere, which I just learned the other day, is that Gorilla now actually, on top of the 40% damage, reduces sneaking cost to 3 AP instead of 4, so you can do this more easily while you're playing, which makes this build just that much better. Okay, so on my next turn, I go ahead and smack her in the back with a couple of backstabs, go ahead and use Flesh Sacrifice to increase my damage a little bit, and I'm able to finish her off with Backlash, giving me 2 AP from Executioner. Now the interesting part again is I use Adrenaline to get 4 AP, and then I go back into Sneak. Now because I'm in Sneak, I can go ahead and move around freely, regenerate all my AP, and even refresh cooldowns by just wasting time. So you can see I get positioned perfectly before I come out of Sneak so I don't waste any AP moving. I do a couple of backstabs, unfortunately there's a miss or two in there, and I go ahead and attack with Backlash, and then I pop Chameleon Cloak to go back invisible. On this turn, I'm a little bit more impatient. I don't go into Sneak, I just move over, I don't even wait to save the AP, and I start unloading in the Summoner there. Make sure he goes down with a Bull Rush. I end up with 3 AP from Executioner, and if this was the Definitive Edition, I could have gone back into Sneak there, but because it's not, I wasn't able to. So I go ahead and use Gag Order on the Undead Warrior there, and then Chloroform in order to put him to sleep. On this turn, I probably could have gone into Sneak. I decided against it. I Bull Rushed through, and unfortunately, I positioned myself very badly. So instead of using 1 AP and then just attacking, which would have basically given me no AP for a defensive ability, I go ahead and Cloak and Dagger a bit away and pop Uncanny Invasion to make sure I don't die. So unfortunately the guy purged me there because of Glass Cannon, but I don't have any other source skills to use anyway, so no big deal. Then I go ahead and Backlash through and get set up for some backstabs, and right before my turn ends I go ahead and hit him with Sleeping Arms in order to set Atrophy, which makes it so he won't be able to attack me on his turn. On this turn, I go ahead and Bull Rush through, again in order to get behind him for some backstabs and set bleeding. Go ahead and stab him once and realize that I'm not going to be able to kill him, so I go ahead and use Chloroform again in order to put him back to sleep. Then I just go ahead and backstab him to death on the next turn.
Excellent.
So that's the level 14 version of the Assassin that is not Lone Wolf, using Glass Cannon, showing you that you can do it. It's very, very, very important that when you're playing this way, you focus on pure damage. That means you use gear that gives you buffs to just stats that deal damage, like Finesse, Scoundrel, Warfare, anything that's going to increase your damage. Critical Chance, even though it's not as good. Because you need to kill things quickly, very quickly. You can even strip away as many skills as you can get away with using in order to just use the bare minimum so that you can put all your points into ones that increase damage so that, you know, you deal as much damage as you can per hit. I mean, you just strip it down to the very, very bare minimum. The other thing I want to mention is that you need to have enough wits with this build in order to go first. Wits is kind of counterintuitive to a melee build. Melee Scoundrel, I should say, because you're going to get auto crits when you backstab, and Wits just gives you crits chance besides initiative, which you don't really need. So it's a little counterintuitive, but you absolutely have to go first in these fights, because if you get caught with your pants down with no armor, the fight will just end before you can even do anything, particularly in harder fights. So this is the level 14 version of the Ranged Assassin. You can see I've taken my own vice and just stripped everything out of there that I don't need in order to make my damage as high as possible. We can do this because of Sneak and Gorilla, particularly with the Definitive Edition now. Being able to sneak for 3 AP is very, very good. I don't have it here, but you can only imagine if I did, it would become that much more powerful. And the other thing that unfortunately I don't have here is Assassinate, which you get at level 16, which does incredible damage from stealth. Was buffed by 20% in this update, so you're going to want to have that once you hit 16 because it's very, very good, especially when you're firing from like Chameleon Cloak. So the first thing I do here is sneak up close to the target, and you might be wondering why I'm doing that when I'm a ranged assassin here, and it's because I don't want to lose that 10% damage from being lower than my target, so I actually get up close enough that it's even and we get 0%, because again, you need all the damage you can get, and you don't want to lose any from something like that. Okay, so the first thing I do here is pop them from stealth. You can see I do pretty good damage. Then I tactical retreat a bit of ways. This is for two reasons. One, to make my ballistic shot hit a bit harder to create some distance. And two, the target I want to kill next is all the way on the opposite side, so this gives me an angle at both of them at the same time. And again, just like the other melee build, target priority, target priority, target priority. You always want to know which ones to kill and kill them first so that you're in less danger, and these two are still the ones to kill. And you can see the damage I'm doing here. I mean, I'm hitting for like 700 to 900 damage a shot. It's ridiculous. And this is not Lone Wolf, so that's pretty hard. So you can see on my next turn, I'm trying to figure out what to do because I know this Fear Maiden's going to do a scream here in a second. I've done this fight enough times to know this. And I want to be able to go into stealth afterward or sneak. So if I'm standing right next to these two enemies, when I kill her, I won't be able to go into sneak. So I go ahead and move a few paces away and go into sneak and go ahead and pass my turn in order to get that fear out of the way before progressing and attacking. So on this turn, I go ahead and lead with a basic attack. Because of Gorilla, I want to get that extra 40% damage. Then I go ahead and fling a ballistic shot, which unfortunately misses. Then I pop Adrenaline, hit with a Sky Shot, and see that I'm not going to be able to kill her, so I go ahead and pop Skin Graft and go back into stealth. So I was a bit annoyed that I missed that ballistic shot a second ago, so on my next turn, I'm a little impatient. I only have 4 AP because I used adrenaline last round. And I just go and hit her with a ballistic shot anyway, and she goes down in one shot. So then I just go right back into sneak. So on this round, I go ahead and basic attack again to get the benefit from Gorilla. Then I go ahead and use Flesh Sacrifice to increase my damage and give me an extra AP. And then I use Elemental Arrowheads to get the blood buff there in order to give more physical damage to my arrows. Go ahead and use Sky Shot and then finish the enemy off, which leaves me with 2 AP. Pop Adrenaline and go right back into sneak. On this turn, I go ahead and hit him with a basic attack. I assume you know why by this point. Then I hit him with Ballistic Shot. I was about to hit him with Sky Shot, and I realized I wasn't going to kill him, so I popped Chameleon Cloak. So on this last turn, I just burn all my AP, getting him down, because I can see there after one good crit that he's going to go, and that pretty much concludes that fight. So that's the level 14 Ranger Assassin version, if you will, the ranged version of the Assassin, and it works extremely well. My Assassin build is kind of a mix between daggers and ranged, but if it's not exactly 100% optimized. I mean, if you want to play a melee version, it's probably more powerful than a mix, and if you want to play a ranged version, it's probably more powerful than a mix. But it does work very nicely in giving you options on what you can do, and sometimes when you're playing with a party, options are better than just straight damage. So I hope this video has showed you how you can play an Assassin with Glass Cannon, which, you know, not a lot of people do. This is a lot easier to play with Lone Wolf because you don't have to worry as much about status effects, and you have about the same amount of AP, and you can hit Flesh Sacrifice at the beginning of your turn and get 7 AP. So it's a lot easier with Lone Wolf, not to mention your damage is better. But it can be done with Glass Cannon. I've shown here the main thing is target priority. Make sure you know who to kill and who to kill first. And don't come out of stealth unless you can kill something and go back into stealth. You know, that's really the way to play solo, and if you're playing in a group, then you absolutely want to make sure you won't be able to just pass your turn every time like that. So you want to use skills like, you know, Bull Rush and things like that, Whirlwind, in order to help your team out and kill enemies, you know, when you're out of stealth. I believe the next build I'm going to do is the Cleric build. This is because they buffed healing undead and decaying targets with Warfare now. I can't wait. I've been playing it on the stream. If you haven't, come by and see Marco and I from RPG Division on the stream and watch us play some Tactician co-op Lone Wolf. It's pretty fun.